Hey everyone, Kevin here. I have the latest from Nancy Pelosi and Steve Mnuchin's phone call this morning. Additionally, we have information from what Steve Mnuchin said during a conference about the next rounds of stimulus and timing. The International Monetary Fund believes that we'll see high debt and sluggish growth until the middle of this decade, and Northern Ireland is going into a 4-week lockdown. The election is also 20 days away. Let's get started right after I remind you to get your life insurance and 2 free stocks via the link down below. Deposit $100, get 2 free stocks, and sign up for life insurance in as little as 5 minutes. Okay, this morning, Nancy Pelosi spoke with Steve Mnuchin by phone for about an hour to discuss proposals that were exchanged over the weekend, which they each state that they had productive talks reviewing language. However, a, quote, major area of disagreement continues to be that the White House lacks an understanding of the need for a national strategic testing plan. The speaker believes we must reopen our economy and schools safely and soon, and scientists agree we must have a strategic testing plan, end quote. That part is obviously a quote from Nancy Pelosi's side. This is something that Nancy Pelosi has also frustratingly belabored in her CNN interview yesterday, where Wolf Blitzer and her had a very heated exchange. I broke that exchange down yesterday in the, quote, intense stimulus update. So if you haven't seen that yet, it's worth watching. Ro Khanna, who is the representative, the Democratic representative who advises taking the $1.8 trillion stimulus deal, who's also the representative who introduced the $2,000 per month stimulus check plan, says he advocates taking the $1.8 trillion deal simply because it would be good for his district, but does not apply that to the entire country, kind of walking back his suggestion that Nancy just take the deal. Ro Khanna is also somebody who is a proponent of a national testing strategy, which right now it seems like the negotiations on this next bill are stuck on a national testing strategy and child tax credits. At this point also, it appears that Nancy Pelosi and Steve Mnuchin will only speak again tomorrow. I honestly don't know what takes them 24 hours in between talking every time, but it's very frustrating. Also, Steve Mnuchin spoke at the Milken Institute Global Conference today and stated the following, quote, the all-or-nothing approach to stimulus doesn't make sense. He further stated, quote, I'd say at this point, the odds of getting something done before the election and executing on it would be difficult. Asked if politics were getting in the way, he said, I think that's definitely part of the reality. That's definitely an issue. Quote, but the president is very focused on when he wins, we will need to do more, so that's part of the reason to continue to work on this. The clock will not stop. Asked if Steve Mnuchin would go higher than the $300 billion offered for state and local governments, he stated he thinks he's made an extraordinary compromise already. And while the two will continue to working, he suggests that standalone bills may be needed in the meantime. This is obviously very frustrating because we know standalone bills are going nowhere. And it's also very frustrating to hear that Steve Mnuchin does not believe a bill will be passed and executed on prior to the election. Though the election is 20 days away, and let's be real, it is still possible that a bill gets passed before the election. But his phrase of executing before the election, I agree, probably not going to happen. So in terms of timing, even if we saw a bill introduced, agreed upon, passed by the House, passed by the Senate, and then signed by Trump, we probably won't actually see checks arrive until after the election. So I'm hopeful that we will still see a bill passed before the election. And even though Donald Trump says when he gets reelected, he wants to do big stimulus, I personally believe, and that's just my opinion, I personally believe Trump wants a stimulus bill passed before the election. He not only would want a stimulus bill passed before the election, but that would cause the stock market to go up, which is the next thing he wants. And ideally, I think he would want an emergency use authorization for something like Regeneron's drug, though it's not good that Eli Lilly's drug, which is very similar to Regeneron's, just was put on hold for safety concerns. The International Monetary Fund suggests that advanced economies continue to borrow freely to restore the health of the public. That is, deal with COVID, borrow to deal with COVID, provide stimulus to deal with the situation, and then get out of debt throughout the rest of the decade, which this is very different from what the International Monetary Fund recommended 10 years ago. This is a sign that economists around the world agree that we should have more stimulus. The Federal Reserve encourages more stimulus, And in case you don't know, the Fed is seen as the United States lender of last resort, and the International Monetary Fund, which we haven't talked much about on this channel, just sort of occasionally, is really seen as the world's lender of last resort. On stimulus, you can also apply the coupon code below for the amazing programs with the coupon code called Stimulus. On COVID, we are now at a new recent average of 50,000 COVID cases being recorded daily. This is still less than the 66,000 cases we averaged in late July. However, COVID cases are trending up in 36 states. The Netherlands, Switzerland, France, Italy, and Spain are all seeing an exponential rise in COVID cases. So far, Sweden, which has thus far resisted mask mandates, maintains a low case count per day. However, Sweden is deemed to have a, quote, high level of government trust society, like a high trust society is what they call it. And the Swedish government asks that if you're sick, your entire household quarantine for 7 days. It is believed that the 14-day quarantine in Sweden is not necessary, and that such a high burden actually leads to less compliance from people. With a 7-day quarantine, they believe that they can identify most of the sick and keep them home. Furthermore, Waymo is now offering full self-driving taxi rides in Phoenix, Arizona. There's the update for today. Hopefully we'll get some decent news one of these days, but it's becoming very frustrating. Thank you so much for the continued support. Nonetheless, we've crossed 900,000 subscribers. Couldn't do it without all of you, so thank you so much. I'm very grateful, and we'll see you next time.